All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
One day at midnight, the sun was so bright, the moon had no light, but I could see this big old Sasquatch. Said he was top-notch at playing hopscotch way up in a tree. So I bet my wristwatch.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I'm Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on Classic 1220 and stream classic1220.ca. In this second hour of tonight's show, we're going to be talking about Bigfoot. Joining me tonight are TOBE Johnson and Brett EICHENBERGER. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Hey, it's great having both of you. First of all, let's go with you, Brett. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been a filmmaker most of my life, going all the way back to about the 6th grade, as a matter of fact. And I'm a native Oregonian growing up here in the Pacific Northwest. And I've always had a fascination with the paranormal and specifically Bigfoot. You know, growing up around these wild Cascade Mountains and forests and whatnot, I'd always kind of wondered what was lurking in the shadows. And I was very early on, I was inspired by Steven Spielberg and E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind and some of the stuff that he put out. And I knew that I wanted to become a filmmaker. And so I definitely got into making films, like I said, at a very early age and kept up with it. But it wasn't until the last few years that we, and when I say we, I mean my wife Jill Remensnyder, who's the producer and writer, and TOBE Johnson, who's the co-producer, and Michael Ferry, who's the cinematographer. It wasn't until recently we were able to do a Bigfoot documentary, and it was kind of birthed from the pandemic, I guess you could say. And we went in with an idea that we were going to make one documentary. We ended up making 2 documentaries, and I'll tell you right now, Rob, I had no idea. We had no idea what we were getting into. It's been amazing.
Well, let's hear what TOBE has to say. TOBE, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Well, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I got mixed up with this Bigfoot issue here when my son and I found a single track heading into the icy trailhead of a pretty well-known trail in the little town of Springfield, Oregon, and it was just a 14.5-inch single track in the mud, and it got a larger question going about the issue. And so father and son kind of took to the trail looking at the Sasquatch conundrum by interviewing witnesses and hosting meetups, which ended up, me having my own personal experiences here. And that's how Brett and I kind of met, is based upon my experiences working with people that have seen Sasquatch, people that I call Sasquatch contactees. These are people that have more than one encounters, right, and have them on their property. And so that was the basis of Brett's interest.
So tell me, have either one of you ever had your one-on-one experience with a Bigfoot or Sasquatch?
Not yet. I'll take that one first. Not exactly, Rob, but I will say that we've come very, very close. And what I mean by that is we have not had a visual. So in other words, not a true visual one-on-one like a lot of people have. Myself, Jill, and Mike, we've all seen eye shine. We've seen them staring at us at 1 o'clock in the morning through the woods.
Right.
A few of them. And we've also have heard various wood knocks. We captured a strange anomalous growl on camera, which is in the second documentary of Flashy Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot. And just a number of things that have been too odd to explain. But we are still waiting for that full-on handshake, get to know you moment.
How about you, TOBE? Have you had an experience?
Well, I have, and it's by embracing these people that are contactees that make these outrageous claims that they see Bigfoot and see them quite often.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the interesting part about this is that not only can you have your own shared experience by hanging out with these people, kind of Jane Goodall-esque, but the issue is much more complicated because there's a whole host of reasons that we don't have anything more than blurry pictures, and it turns quickly. It veers left into the paranormal. It does it quite easily. And so in order to look at the Bigfoot issue, you have to kind of put it in the context of like it's always out of reach, always just right out of view. But for what it's worth, yeah, I did see Bigfoot. I saw its big feet, actually. And, it took some work getting there, but we had a whole lot of fun looking at all these other mysteries as well.
It seems that the Bigfoot phenomenon parallels the alien phenomenon. A lot of people have had the experience. They share the experience. They believe 150% it really is what they say it is, and yet still no evidence. How can we... Go on. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really true, Rob. The evidence is hard to come by, but the psychological impact is not.
That's right.
And that's one of the things that we discuss in our first film, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And it's not something that we've ever seen in a Bigfoot documentary, or really a UFO documentary for that matter, is that these people are having experiences that are in line with post-traumatic stress disorder. And in fact, we interviewed a Yale-educated psychiatrist who talks about Bigfoot sightings and seeing something that your mind can't wrap itself around and can't comprehend. And, a lot of these people are, or let me rephrase, a lot of these people were outdoor enthusiasts, and they're no longer brave enough or courageous enough or willing, I should say, to go back into the wilderness, to go back into the forest. And we're talking about hunters. We're talking about fishermen. We're talking about hikers. We're talking about any number of people who have been minding their P's and Q's, on a trail or what have you, or out hunting, and they've come across something that they haven't seen, and that something was beyond comprehension.
So why would this cause them not to go back into the woods to further investigate it, or in the case of a hunter, to try and hunt this creature down?
That's a great question, and I'll add a couple of my 2 cents to that. Now I know Tobe has got some words on that as well, but basically, it comes down to fear, of course, and not every single one of these cases is a fear-based case. Not every single one of these sightings is like that, and a lot of people do go back into the woods. There's a lot of people that become consumed by this. It's not unlike Roy Neary in the classic film Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Right.
He sees these UFOs and he gets consumed by it so much so that he's willing to give up his family to get on that ship and fly off into the stars. At least I think he did in the director's cut. But that's a cinema joke for those fans of Close Encounters. But but some people, I think, really just don't ever want to see it again. There's a host of other things that can go along with the sighting, and that includes rocks being thrown. The power of their voice is enough to rattle you to the bone. There's a smell sometimes that goes along with it. Yet others, such as Tobe, have started gifting exchanges with them.
Tell us about that, Tobe.
Well, so the gifting process, it works out like this. Usually it's a small item placed near an area that you would find it. And these can be small objects that are something that you would ordinarily pass by, but they seem kind of unique. Sometimes they seem like they're related to something that you just spoke about. These are kind of like gifts of significance, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're just like, oh, I was talking about needing a bobber to go fishing, and all of a sudden you wander outside and sitting by your truck is a little tiny orange bobber. These are little tiny things that these witnesses have said along the way. Now, how does that fit into the Bigfoot issue? Well, it's hard to deny it when you see a size 14.5-inch print near these little gifts, or you see these giant greasy handprints that they leave behind, or you find, that there's a sound accompanied with these gifts as you're finding them. So this is what has been said along the way. Only, what is going on here? Is this just primate behavior where they're bringing, a little treasure like a crow would do or a raven? I don't think so, just based upon the fact that they seem to be related to what the people are talking about. So there seems to be a complication with, what we're looking at here. Something that has language implies that it has culture, or at least something that understands language. Of course, if you look in another long-term witness like Ron Moorhead up in the Sierra Nevadas, he has the most, comprehensive recordings of what can only be described as an undocumented language from an unknown human-type species. So there's quite a bit to this, and gifting is part of that.
What do we know so far about Bigfoot, Brett? Based on the interviews you've done, the research you've done, how would you describe Bigfoot to someone who's never heard or even seen a picture of it?
That's a great question. I guess I would describe them as being a giant hominid that lives in the forest lands of the world. And that's a pretty vague description, I know, but I think that's the starting point, the entry point. We don't really know what these things are, and there's a little bit of a divide in the community of Bigfoot, in that there are those who believe that it's purely flesh and blood, potentially an ape or a primate, and there's those that believe that it has paranormal abilities. And I've got to admit, when I first found out about Bigfoot and I first heard these quote unquote paranormal abilities attributed to them, I thought that was crazy. But once I started listening to the folks that have seen things they can't explain, such as these things shape-shifting, and
right,
some people have watched them walk into trees, literally walk into a trunk of a tree. Other people have seen them turn into orbs and vice versa, and or disappear before their very eyes. And as a matter of fact, in our movie, our sequel, Paranormal Bigfoot, we have cloaking video that I really tried debunking, over the course of 3 or 4 hours. And I'd be willing for somebody to take a look at the video and debunk it, but I don't think they can. I think what we have on camera is a cloaked Bigfoot. I think that these things do have paranormal abilities. And so it's a really complicated explanation to answer your question, Rob.
It certainly is. And over the years, I've had the opportunity of speaking to a number of people, everyone from Tom Biscardi down to Lauren Coleman. And the question that they cannot answer is, what do you think the origins of Bigfoot are? Where does he originate from? Is he multidimensional? Does he come from somewhere in the stars? Or was he, or is he, a creature that is part of this planet that has been so evasive that he just hasn't been able to be greeted by his fellow people that walk on 2 feet with him? But gentlemen, we've got to take our first break. When we come back, I'd like to investigate that with you. X-Zone Nation, this is the X-Zone. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, from everywhere. This is where we can be heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight. Classic 1220 is the website, classic1220.ca.
Night was dark in the mountains, as the story goes. An Indian tale brought 'em out, where only the Sasquatch go.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about Bigfoot this hour, and we have two filmmakers with us, documentary filmmakers. We have Brett Eichenberger and Tobe Johnson. And gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us tonight. And the question that I pose is, where do you and other members of the Bigfoot community believe that Bigfoot originates from? Tobe, let's go with you.
Well, people have posed that question to them. These extended experiencers or habituators, these contactees make these outrageous claims, and they go ahead and they ask Bigfoot via telepathy or what they call stick glyphs, or I think we call it glyph Latin in our documentary through one of our witnesses. And these are type of runic alphabet left out with twigs. And what I hear back from them is that, Sasquatch comes from the star people, and that Sasquatch has been seen along with abductees as they're along for the ride. So this the origin story of Sasquatch is up to interpretation. For me, I think there is a little bit of deception going on here to what Sasquatch may really be, because there is such a variety of stories along with the abductees that have these experiences with aliens. I'm not quite sure on the origins of Sasquatch. It really is, a total mystery. But, the phenomena itself is absolutely real. It's the interpretation process that we get in trouble with.
Why would you what would you say the deception is?
Well, I think it has to do with the cloak and mirror and dagger, the cloak and mirror aspect of this whole thing, because of the fact that it is so out of reach and it belongs inside of kind of these mystery schools of thought where there seems to be this initiation to get closer to the phenomena. It's very seductive for the person that loves a good mystery, and it kind of drags you deeper and deeper into the woods. But, as I say in my book, at the end of it, all you really have is shadows. So you have to kind of be careful because you don't really know the nature of the beast, so to speak, because there is so, little to actually prove. It's more of like a reflection of yourself along the way of what you do when you discover, something that's strange and magical.
Brett, what's your interpretation of the origins of Bigfoot?
Boy, I don't know, Rob. That's been something I've been wrestling with for a long time, even going back before we started this documentary. And, part of me feels like they have been here a lot longer than modern man has been here. And that doesn't necessarily make them primates, but it could mean that they might fit into our evolution at some point somehow. My views have changed radically, since I was a kid, and I was brought up in a traditional, church-going household every Sunday. And it's not that I don't believe in God or anything anymore. I just feel like there's so much more to the universe than what we've been taught. And I feel like there's some stuff that's being suppressed. And to kind of answer your question, there are these things in the Bible that are called the Nephilim, and they are half angel and they're half human. And I think it's a possibility that Bigfoot could be what the Bible is referring to. But I don't know. It's like Tobe said, there's a chance that these things could be extraterrestrial. So, I mean, the question is are we a mixture of, are human beings a mixture of Sasquatch and extraterrestrial beings? That's Ron Moorhead's theory, and he could be onto something. Regardless, it's extremely complicated and it's frankly bizarre. But I feel like ask me in 2 weeks, I might have a different theory.
Well, just to piggyback on that real quick is that we don't even know who we are. I mean, this is what world religions and wars are all about. We're still looking into it, arguing about who we are, and that's really the seduction of what we're talking about right now. Is the origin of us. That's what Bigfoot really has to offer. Is it's kind of a mirror into our own complexity, And, these are the deeper questions with all these mystery schools as we look at them. But, as one of the guests in our documentary says, Ira Wolfnosen, Sasquatch is just one of the gates that you go through. There are many gates to walk around and look at and observe. And as you get closer to this issue, not only do you find out that it's fundamentally real and it's more than flesh and blood, but it offers something about the afterlife and looking into your own mortality.
If Bigfoot or Sasquatch is actually an alien from another star, another planet, another dimension, then this would be proof positive that, we're not alone. Because if he is here on this planet from another planet, he's breathing air. He's breathing the same air we are. That just opens up an entire new realm of possibilities.
Well, totally. And I'll take that one first.
Sure.
Brett and I talked quite a bit off the record about disclosure and what's going on right now and how it's all connected to this documentary. I mean, really, it's some of the best free promo that we have that, we couldn't have ever really expected is this UFO disclosure, because what we're talking about is so closely connected. I mean, you can't go to a Bigfoot conference anymore without it being a UFO conference, as well. And so this is what we're dealing with right now, is we're dealing with the complexity of what to call Sasquatch. I mean, the relic hominid concept being brought forth at these conferences is, in my opinion, a dying theory. We're looking at something so complex, so advanced, that is, it's given the better part of 60 years a really good run at looking at the flesh and blood explanation of this. But now we're into something else.
Is it possible you're looking, or the Bigfoot Society and the Bigfoot researchers are looking at something else because they can't prove its existence using the old way of thinking? So they're looking. They're looking at a new angle.
Yeah. Just so you know, here I wanted to make sure. It looks like the audio may have dropped on that. We lost Brett.
Oh, we did. Oh, yes, we did.
I think so.
My producer said yeah. So let's see if we can get him back here. Well, he's still not available. Ah, here he is. He's back.
There it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was that just me that got kicked off?
Yep, it was just you.
How strange! I didn't touch anything. I promise. I swear. I think it's Bigfoot.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
what
problem.
I missed?
Oh, I was just saying that that if Bigfoot is an extraterrestrial or from another dimension, and if he was to if we were to have positive proof that he did exist, for example, if a cadaver of a Bigfoot was ever found, then this would open up an entire new gambit of of research, because if Bigfoot is from another planet, he's here on this planet, he's breathing oxygen like we are. That would just open up the door to many more questions, but at least you'd have the proof that he is real. And then when we look at the aspect of, researchers and followers of Bigfoot are now going from the bipedal concept to, well, maybe he's from another dimension or part alien. Is that because there's no proof of his existence in the physical world as it stands?
Deep questions here. I mean, these are, I can listen to all my old Aper friends just rolling their eyes, hearing us discuss Sasquatch having alien principles to them or possibilities, right? But, we talk about the science of what could be happening here with, a scientist by the name of Simeon Hein. And Brett was smart enough to have a scientist kind of lead the talk on the classified interest of things like cloaking, the classified interest of what could be happening as far as these balls of light that are constantly seen in proximity to Bigfoot activity, these orbs. And so to have that conversation at a heightened level, finally, with someone like Simeon Hein, takes us to a new type of science altogether. We don't really even know the right questions you have to ask about this subject matter, but it damn sure well has more to do with the questions that we can't answer than the ones we've been asking for the last 60 years.
Now, before we get to my next question that I'm going to pose to Brett, you were talking about the congressional hearings into UFOs. What did they accomplish? Nothing. We're no further ahead than we were prior to the congressional hearings. Everything that the public was waiting to hear was automatically put into a back room, into a secure setting. I think that watching the congressional hearings was a total waste of my time. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm going to agree to disagree just a little bit, Rob.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the hearings were front and center in front of the American people, and things were being discussed that the American people had never heard before. Now, those of us that have had an interest in the paranormal our entire lives they're very familiar with some of these things. But for someone to sit in front of a congressional hearing and talk about non-human biological specimens with the idea that if he's perjuring, he could be facing some very, very serious consequences.
Yeah, yes.
And I say this as somebody that I used to work for the government myself in Washington, D.C. And so I know how stiff those penalties are. We're starting to get some things in the vernacular. And just the other day, there was a hearing, and I posted this on our Facebook page. A congresswoman from Florida talked about interdimensional beings. Mm-hmm. And to hear a congresswoman speak about interdimensional beings, I felt like was a big breakthrough. And I do agree with you in that we've got a long ways to go, and the powers that be, who I believe are defense contractors, are doing anything and everything they can to keep the real good stuff suppressed.
All right, but let's face it, Grush himself had never seen anything he was purporting that existed. Mm-hmm. So how can we take anything that Grush said as legitimate? Because he himself did not see anything. It was hearsay evidence at the very best.
Mm-hmm. I'll chime in on that one. I think, if Grush is to be believed, then it's based upon where there's smoke, there's fire, and he can lead somebody to where the evidence is. And if Grush represents the Bigfoot issue, let's put him in the category of someone who has, an ability to know based upon proximity, like myself, right? I guess I would kind of look at myself and my small little world here in Agnew, Washington, as a bit of a whistleblower and representing these people that have made these outrageous claims.
Gentlemen, I hate to do this. I hate to do this, but I've got to take my break. Please stand by. Exo Nation, Tobe Johnson and Brett Eichenberger are our guests. We're talking about Bigfoot, and we'll all be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada on Classic 1220 and around the world on classic1220.ca. And you can always send me an email, whether you're a skeptic or a believer, to xzone@classic1220.ca.
The night was dark in the mountains, as the story goes. An Indian tale brought him out where only the Sasquatch goes.
You're listening to your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. We're talking about Bigfoot this hour with two filmmakers and Bigfoot followers and researchers. Our first guest is Brett Eichenberger, and our second guest is Tobe Johnson. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's great having you with us. But my question to you now, Brett, is As a professional documentarian and filmmaker, what is your opinion as a professional on the Bigfoot film at Bluff Creek that our friend Patterson took, the Patterson Gimlin film?
Well, I think it's legitimate, and I think it's legitimate for a variety of reasons. The first reason I think it's legitimate is because of the costume or lack thereof. And to be specific about that, Rob, back in the late 1960s, there was a Special Academy Award that was given out to the folks that did Planet of the Apes.
Right.
And Planet of the Apes are, obviously they're supposed to look humanoid, but they look kind of phony. And the first indication that Patty is legitimate is the fact that this suit, if it is indeed a suit, is form-fitting. That technology was hard to come by back in the day. And you see you can actually see the muscles moving underneath. Not only that, but she has breasts. Mm-hmm. And I find it very difficult to believe that a couple of cowboys, if they were to create a Sasquatch costume, would agree to put breasts on it. To me, that's a major red flag. I think that if these are guys that are out there looking for Bigfoot and wanting to avoid ridicule, that would probably be the last thing that they would do. And the other thing too is the way that she moves. Mm-hmm. She moves, as if this was a rehearsed walk. If indeed they found an actor and rehearsed with this actor and came up with a track line for this actor to walk. This, as a movie director, I know how difficult it would be to do something like that and execute it in one take. It's not easy. And there's a lot of things about the Patty footage that are quote unquote perfect, in my opinion, from a directing and producing opinion. The costume, the way that it walked, the way that she turns her head around at the exact right time. She looks like she's fleeing from them, but in a calm, cool, collected way. So there's a performance aspect about it as well. The last thing is I've actually been to the spot. I've stood in the location that Patty has walked myself. And I can say that this was a very, very rugged area. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, although it could have been done. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that a couple of cowboys from Yakima, Washington would drag down this suit that somebody would have had to have put months into to make it look that authentic. Drag it all the way down to Bluff Creek, California to film 15 seconds when these guys lived 45 minutes to an hour away from the Mount Adams wilderness. So there's a lot there to me that makes me believe that it's legitimate.
Well, didn't Roger Patterson have a bit of a tainted life? He was always into the sensationalism and is it impossible to have been perpetrated? No, absolutely not. It's not impossible. And the Bigfoot world is filled with hoaxes. The world is filled with hoaxers and scammers and thieves and criminals. Yep.
They're all around us all the time. It's not regulated to Bigfoot or UFOs or the paranormal. And it's within the realm of possibility. And I'll definitely acknowledge that. However, he was in a zone in this area. And I think people forget how rugged this area of California is. A lot of times people think of California, and I've traveled extensively through California my entire life. And this is an area that's as rugged as anywhere in Alaska or the Pacific Northwest. It's a long ways away from a big city. This is not, when people think of California, they think of Los Angeles or San Francisco or whatever. This is way far away from any of those places. And it's not easy to get to. So I don't know. I think that, Roger's past is Roger's past. And yeah, sure, maybe it's a little bit shady. But at the same time, it's entirely within the realm of possibility that a Bigfoot walked past him that day and he had his camera ready. And I will say this much, too, that people need to remember is that Patterson and Gimlin were out looking for Bigfoot for a long time. This wasn't just kind of like, they rode up on horseback and this happened and then, they shot right back up to Washington with this cool footage. It didn't happen like that. As a cameraman myself, and I've been filming, going on 30 some years, I've caught a lot of stuff on camera that I would never, it was once in a lifetime. And you see this every single day on YouTube. People are getting stuff now that they have cameras in their pockets. People are filming things that you would never believe. Some of it's real and some of it's fake. And in this case, I believe that Patterson-Gimlin film footage is real.
Tobe, what's your take on it?
Well, yeah, Brett was talking about Planet of the Apes and the fact that, not only Planet of the Apes to compare to the costume, but also special effects departments from Disney said that whoever did that, they would have automatically hired that person had that footage been fake at all. Then you get into the complexity of what's called frame 352, where the female subject turns to the right and looks, Bob Gimlin coming up off his horse. And as it turns its head, it, brings its shoulders around as well. Well, there's something called a cowl, right? The cowl is the headpiece that connects to the shoulders of the costume. And so as Patty turns her head, you would have to see that cowl move separately on the shoulders, i.e. the fabric or the acrylic hair. And that just doesn't happen. Instead, you see physiology, you see biology.
Right.
And then there's a complication. There's no foam latex at that point. And if you're going to add breast, you're going to need silicone or some kind of foam latex in order to make those breasts seem real. That adds a whole different type of complexity from a special effects point of view. So, as the film gets older, it gets better. The debunkers shut up. Yes, the proximity of Patty, it could be within human range, I guess, just based upon speculation that it's under 7 feet. But that doesn't disqualify all three things that I just listed. And the list gets way more complete when people start looking online.
All right, let me ask you this then. If Roger Patterson and Gimlin were able to get photographs, and if this is what Bigfoot looks like, how come no one else has been able to get even a fuzzy picture of a Bigfoot to the extent that these two guys did? And with the technology today, wouldn't it be a lot easier to get that all-important smoking gun shot? Everybody's got a phone, like you said. People driving on the highways have cam cameras in their cars. It seems that in a world that is filled with technology, Bigfoot becomes more elusive than ever.
Yes and no, and I'll give you two reasons why. Okay. Yes, in that there has been footage captured of Bigfoot. For instance, I watched one the other night that was probably a decade old of some police officers that caught something running across the road at night. Occasionally a trail cam will pick up something. We feature a really good photograph that came from Coquille, Oregon in our first film, A Flashy Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. But here's the deal. And I know a lot of people aren't going to believe me when I say this, but there are a lot of crystal clear photos out there of Bigfoot, and I've seen them. And the people that have taken them won't share them. And there's a variety of reasons why they won't share them.
Okay.
Number one is that they don't want the massive global attention that a clear Bigfoot shot brings. And most of that attention is going to be negative. Number two, it's taking place somewhere near their property. Okay. It's taking place either on property they own or nearby. And number three, there are people out there that protect these things. They don't want this to get out. They don't want these things to be discovered. And the government, in my opinion, is of the same ideology, because of a variety of different reasons we can talk about later. But like I said before, I have seen very clear video footage. In fact, I had a native man from Spokane, Washington, send me some clear footage, and I asked him if I could put it in one of my films, and he said, no, absolutely not. So it's, and I have that in my possession, but I'm going to honor these people. If it's their wish to not get it out, then I'm going to respect that. Someday at some point, I think somebody's going to get that kind of that smoking gun, whether it's a body or whether it's a photograph, and they may release it. But what's really interesting is it's kind of like winning the lottery. you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. All of a sudden you find out that everybody wants your money, and then it becomes a problem. More money, more problems. And so there's definitely a quite the negative side of releasing something like this.
All right, but if you have all these people who are hardened believers and all these people who go into the forest and the woods looking for Bigfoot, trying to prove its existence, and yet there is proof out there that's not being shared, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's just like somebody who says, I've got an alien in my freezer, but I'm not going to show it to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is a conversation about experience over evidence, and that's where Bigfoot rests more easily. This is what the First Nations people told me right out of the gate when I got invested in this. Mainly with time, and of course with money as well. But these are experiences you're having. If you're in it for, getting evidence.
Yeah.
They seem to know your intention. First of all, so going into the woods trying to capture them on camera, we just don't seem to have permission to do that, especially with modern equipment. What my speculation, what happened with Roger and Bob, is they had old-timey equipment. They didn't have all the gizmos and sensors and EMF waves coming off of it, and IR lenses, FLIR, and all the drones. They just had old-timey stuff. And maybe that's how they got lucky with this, because there seems to be ample evidence that you can get plenty of ghost stuff on old-timey equipment as well. So maybe the older the equipment, better the evidence. But chasing after this and trying to get evidence in general is kind of a fool's errand.
Why?
Well, they seem to always be one step ahead of you. They seem to be able to predict your motivation and your next step to a degree that is uncomfortable for most modern science to understand. But witnesses have told me, and I can say quite comfortably, that they seem to be able to read your mind and look at what your next moves are going to be beyond what an animal or predator can do. And if that means you're going to bring in a camera, well, they know you have a camera before you get out of your truck because they are able to do that. Audio equipment, however, whatever's going on with being able to record these things, they seem quite comfortable with that. There is a difference.
All right, gentlemen, please stand by. We have to take our final break. And Exo Nation, our two guests this hour are filmmakers who have done a film on Bigfoot. We're going to be talking about the film when we come back. Our first guest is TOBE Johnson, and our second guest is Brett EICHENBERGER, and we'll all be back on the other side, continuing our discussion into Bigfoot. Now, Exo Nation, send me an email, whether you're a skeptic or a believer. My email address is xzone@classic1220.ca, and you're listening to the X Zone right here on Classic 1220 from our studios and center in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the final hour of tonight's show, and we're talking about Bigfoot. Now, guys, if the evidence is there, and you've seen it, why are you guys doing a film about Bigfoot? Brett.
That's a great question. Well, we're doing a film about Bigfoot because people need to know that Bigfoot exists. And like I said earlier, it is difficult for us to get the kind of images and the kind of evidence, photo. I guess it's really photo that we're, wanting and hoping for. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it would be great if we were out filming in the woods and we captured clear
But-
footage of Bigfoot.
But you guys said that you've seen the photo. You've got the photo.
We
Yeah.
need permission to use the photo.
Oh, all right.
If
So
we were to-
if you know it exists, based on the evidence that you have, why the film? If you're not going to actually show your audience that there is proof, here's Bigfoot, mystery solved, game over.
Well, it's part of the reason why films of humans are still being made, going back 100 years. And every year there's a different film about a different person and their experiences going through life. And I think that there's so much to learn about these beings, about these creatures. Whatever it is they are, there is so much to learn about them. And one of the things that we've learned over this period of time is that they're different in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. People have had different experiences.
Okay.
Yet at the same time, there are things that are very similar. So I think it's a subject matter that, one, people just can't get enough of, and two, people like a good mystery, and three, I think it's important for us to try and really just help people go out into the wilderness and go out into the wild with an open mind.
Is it also possible that if proof was given that Bigfoot really did exist, the man behind the curtain would be exposed and that would be the end of the Bigfoot?
I disagree, and part of that is because, again, I think there's just so much there for people to learn about. I think it could even turn it up to 11, if you will. I think the public could be enamored. It's like any interesting wild animal that we have on this planet. I think they're, whether it's a polar bear or a kangaroo, I think there's always something to be learned, or whether it's the ocean for that matter.
Right. Yeah. Because
there's so much to see and explore in the ocean. I mean, that's just we're just getting started there. So,
Right.
So no, I think you would probably have Bigfoot pandemonium if these things were discovered.
what about these people who actually go into the wilderness with the intent on finding Bigfoot and capturing or killing it?
So I'm gonna let you handle that one.
Well, I mean, it's a cute byline. I don't, wish them any luck in their pursuit, but, I kind of don't have to worry about it because they're the ones in danger, because these things can sense your motives and your intention. And if your intention is to hunt them and hurt them, God help you, because they're hardly ever alone. And the ones that are alone, then you probably really should worry, because there's a reason they've been kicked out. These are things that I think along the way that have been proven to be kind of accurate, just based upon the type of activity that people with guns have gotten compared to people with bear spray. Especially if you're nervous in the woods around a family unit, there's something called infrasound that pushes them back. So you hear that time and time again about people that want to hurt these things, and maybe some of them should be hurt, because I think there is a variety, just like with humans. So I'm not opposed to capital punishment for the wrong Bigfoot.
Right. If Bigfoot does exist, why hasn't been, and if Bigfoot is apparently seen around the world, why hasn't there been another country, another place, another group that comes forth with the evidence that everybody's looking for? Brett?
That's a great question. I don't exactly know the answer to that. I know that they are rare, in other parts of the world. I mean, I think that's a certainty. And there's different types, there's different varieties. Of course, the most famous one being the Yeti, or the abominable snowman,
Right. Yeah.
which was, first discovered, or the tracks were first found in the 1950s, but the lore has been there forever. You could say the same thing about UFOs and aliens. I mean, South America is full of aliens and UFOs, and they're trying to do their best to get some of this information out, and it's kind of backfiring with these dolls or whatever these mummies were.
Right. Yeah.
And for a long time, Russia has claimed that they've had, alien artifacts and whatnot. I mean, even the Defense minister of Israel came out and said, not only are there aliens, but there's a galactic federation of them. This is the former defense minister of Israel.
There's the key word.
And everybody
You see,
brushed him off.
there's the key word, former. Like we've got the former minister of defense who I believe passed away, Paul Hellyer, who was also, once he had nothing better to do, jumped on the UFO wagon. And yet when I talked to him, I asked him point blank, as Minister of Defense, was there at any time you saw a UFO report cross your desk? His answer was unequivocally no. So and then I have to question the motives behind whistleblowers. These are people who take an oath of secrecy. How can you trust someone who breaks an oath to keep secret? There's so many double-edged swords in this entire gambit that it's no wonder the mass public says, listen, I don't need to deal with this. And when it comes to the congressional hearings, hey, they were great. I haven't heard a darn thing about anything since then. It was hot for a week after, and then nothing.
Yeah.
So this is what the public is faced with. So how do you, as filmmakers who are dealing with a topic that is very hard, and my hat's off to you guys for doing the job you do, but how do you convince or present a case for Bigfoot to a public that, for the majority of the public, really has no interest?
That's a great question.
I don't know if that's totally true, though. I mean, we just got done, celebrating the fact that this is the number 5 documentary and possibly the number 2 documentary streaming on the largest platform, Amazon, right now, which is unheard of for a film like this, especially a Bigfoot film that has no promotion, no big stars in it. And, we're second to Taylor Swift. So it's really a cause for celebration looking down, these deep rabbit holes on Sasquatch issues like this that, we just need to step back and look at this and say, now, what do we know? What do we believe? And, what can we move forward with?
Like I said, congratulations to you guys. And I mean that sincerely. But I think that when it comes to Bigfoot, when it comes to ghosts, when it comes to aliens, lake monsters, and the list goes on and on and on, that the public has been duped so many times. Mainstream media has been duped so many times that right now, unless you've got the cadaver of a Bigfoot strung over your vehicle and you're going down Fifth Avenue in New York blowing your horn, there's so many questions out there, and especially with AI and CGI being able to combine forces and produce anything that anybody wants.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Rob, is that people are seeing these things for real. They're seeing things in the sky. They're seeing things in the forest. And with each passing day, someone new, a non-believer, becomes converted. A non-believer sees something that they can't comprehend, that they didn't know existed. This goes for UFOs. This goes for Bigfoot. I myself have had a ghost experience. And it's the people that are closest to them that realize that Todd or Annie or whomever else has had this experience is different. They've changed. They see something different in their eyes when they talk about this. People don't get scared when they talk about seeing a bear or any other wildlife, unless there's a very close, frightening encounter. These people, these witnesses, incredible eyewitnesses that you could use to convict in a court of law are growing every single day across the world. The veil seems to be getting thinner. And therefore, like Tobe said, they're turning to places like Amazon, Netflix, and whatnot, and they're looking for answers. Some of the people that we've interviewed that have seen Bigfoot, the first thing they did, they went online to make sure they weren't crazy. They looked for other witnesses that had seen the same thing that they'd seen. Because the problem is that this keeps you up at night. this psychologically ravages you. And that's what people need to understand, is that when you see something that's so extraordinary that completely destroys our perception of the universe, it doesn't leave you, it consumes you. So I would say that right now is the best thing that we have going for us, is the fact that people are seeing it, people are living it.
Is it people are living it, or people want to live it? And what they're not encountering.
Some people do want to live it.
You know,
yeah.
and just because people look up in the sky and see something that they can't identify doesn't mean it's a flying saucer. Just because somebody goes into the woods and sees something that they can't identify because of one reason or another doesn't mean it's Bigfoot. And I think, and you know, I think that the time has come within society, and especially in the media, where we have to be very careful about what we say and what we do, because I believe that there is more vetting to be done, and media outlets, as well as independent producers, independent production companies, have to take a greater responsibility in what they produce and put in front of the public. So what they see and what may be actual, in the majority of times, are two different things.
Absolutely, 100%. But my question to you is, is that 100% truth all the time?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
It's the fact that we know that it's not, that we know that there's something going on,
or that there's nothing going on, and that there are people who continue the myth for one reason or another. Like, in my opinion, it's the UFO people that are responsible for the UFO cover-up and conspiracy, because as long as the cover-up and conspiracy is alive, the UFO community flourishes. As soon as it's exposed as what it really is, whether it's a top secret aircraft that is being tested by the government, or whether it's a UFO that they can actually prove exists, this is what needs to be looked at. Who has got the most to gain from anything that perpetuates the possibility of something being real? Gentlemen, I hate to be a party pooper, but I have to say so long for tonight. We've just run out of time. And Exonation, I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. So from everyone here to everyone out there, always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. And thank you for sharing your time with us right here on your hometown radio, Classic 1220.